He was what people called a hopeless romantic. That is, the chance of him finding romance was hopeless. The boy who went fishing for love with shoestrings tied to sticks, throwing it into the water, trying not to catch anything at all. Barely long enough to dip the aglets into the water. The boy afraid of the ocean. He preferred the skies, a daydreamer with his head in the clouds who believed in flight, but not flying too high, because as a child he heard the story of Icarus, the boy who soared and then drowned. And he didn't want to drown, so he was afraid. Afraid of the water, afraid of love. He wanted to swim, but he didn't know how. He had seen so many people try and fail, and he didn't want to fail. Of all the things that he was afraid of, failure was the most terrifying. I'm going to look at the paper. The sky suited him much more. There he could fly solo, escape the taunting and teasing, the loners and antisocials that stuck to him, weighed him down, labeled him. Post-it notes with racial slurs and terrible names made up his wings. Heavy with that weight on his mind, he was brought closer and closer to the ocean. People told him that falling in love was like flying, but he didn't believe them. Because falling in love had the word falling in it, and falling meant hitting the water, and hitting the water meant drowning. So, by the transitive property, falling in love meant drowning. And he didn't want to drown. That is, until he realized what love was like. It was like that numbing feeling a person gets when he forgets how to write after coming back to school after a long break. It's like the birds that flew in his ribcage wanting to get out the first time he saw her. The first time she smiled at him. It was like the seconds that felt so much longer every time he talked to her in between class periods. It was like walking on clouds. When he walked her back to her door on her first date, when he walked her back to her door on their first date. When he kissed her, he was weightless. It was like learning how to swim for the first time. She taught him that before he could go into the water, he would have to learn to breathe. She taught him how to breathe again. He was so used to holding his breath that he had forgotten how. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. She taught him how to close his eyes, shut up, and jump. It was like being submerged underwater. When he was with her, his chest tightened and his pulse quickened. She showed him that love was like swimming. Swimming was like weightlessness, and weightlessness was like flight. So, by the transitive property, love was like flight. And he believed her. She told him not to fear the gods because he stood on their shoulders. Poseidon looked down on him and gave him courage. Hades gave him passion. Zeus gave him strength to overcome his fears. She was his Thea, his goddess of light. Shining above him, beaming like the sun in the sky that watched over him as he flew. Unafraid of how high and how low, he soared. And slowly but surely, his post-it note wings began to melt. Thank you.